Welcome to the Ave Podcast, where I'm joined by author and therapist Jonathan Boxill as we have a discussion about where are the safe spaces and the protections for the minds of black men. We dive into a deep conversation about it. I'd say more, but we're about to start the show in about a minute, so if you just hold tight, we'll experience it together. All right, but seriously, I hope you enjoy this one. All right, with that said, wherever you listen to podcasts, South Sharav is there. You can check out my website at southsharav.com. You can listen to it on all platforms. If you are a lover of the Stitcher app and platform, you have until August the 29th to get as much listening time in as you want because it will be discontinued. But the good news is you can catch my shows on the other platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn and Alexa, for example. And speaking of which, 5 stars, please. 5 stars, please. Click on them. Click on all of them. All of them. 5 stars. You got it in you. Thank you. All right, I appreciate you in advance, all right? Let's get this going. It's the Ave Podcast with Cal C on South Sharav Radio. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Ave Podcast with Cal C on South Sharav Radio.
Welcome to the Ave Podcast. I wanted to share an idea from an online conversation that we were having about the state of black men, and now we're kind of bringing it to life here on this podcast. But we had a discussion about, being in the midst of everything that's happening in this world where there are safe spaces and protection for everyone. But where are the protection for black men and the minds of black men? Now, I know for you, this is a subject that's near and dear to you, but if I had to ask you, that question out loud, where is the protection and the spaces that can provide cover for the men that look like us?
That's a good question, bro.
I prepared a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think there are very few, and I think that's the problem. I think that when I speak to a lot of brothers, and for some reason, we get into these conversations about things that they're going through. There's a lot of, black men dealing with stuff in silence because I think a lot of times we're socialized to keep things within and not really express ourselves, especially, if you have a family or if you're the head of the household in terms of like the male in the household. You're expected to be a fixer and to problem solve and to fix everything. What can happen is you abandon yourself. You forget to take care of you and express your needs because you don't want to put that burden on anybody else. I think a lot of times men don't realize that they carry a lot with them, too much.
Right.
And I think a lot of the statistics kind of reflect that. There aren't many safe spaces where men can go and, connect with other men, learn, build, unload stuff off their mind, without fear of looking a certain way or being judged or whatever.
Right. Right. And I mean, we do live in a time where people react completely different to, I guess, to mental health and what our parents or previous generations go through. There are a lot of programs now that cater to it and outside of us, but more importantly, there's more compassion, for those that suffer from, keeping things in and not having good mental health. But we're a generation removed from where the knowledge of what we were taught is to keep it in, right? To your point, like it was never to show emotion, never cry, never break. And in a lot of ways, I'll speak for myself. I still practice a lot of it. You know what I mean? And it's
what do you practice specifically?
Well, just those points in particular, like, not always showing my emotions, not always, being guarded, not keeping stuff in and just trying to deal with it on my own. Like, that's like, I would say I'm trying to break out of, or I've done a good job breaking out of it, I should say. But that took a very long time to get through. You know what I mean? And to be honest, I think I'm still working through those things, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can totally agree with that because when you look at your models, like growing up, we didn't really see that growing up. And what we do see is men are usually allowed to show one emotion, which is anger.
Right.
You know? So like a man could be frustrated, so he shows his frustration with anger, you know?
Mm-hmm.
A man could be feeling powerless, but he shows his powerlessness through anger. A man could be feeling overwhelmed, but he shows his overwhelm through anger. A man could be feeling afraid of something or ashamed of something, but he shows that through anger. You know what I'm saying? Because that's something that men, in some ways, were taught that's a no-no to show anything else but that.
Right.
What's the toll or the cost that comes because of that? That's the problem, right?
And how does that affect your overall health too, in terms of not of only expressing one emotion? To your point, right? Like and not even just expressing, but like connecting with it, like actually knowing, yeah, I feel overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Oh, is that what that feeling is in my stomach or my chest? You know what I'm saying? Or the tightness? Oh, is that what these racing thoughts are? Is that why I was having problems sleeping? Is that why it's overwhelmed? Like, they found that just labeling shit is helpful. Mm-hmm. Just labeling. Just, you know what? Yeah, I'm a little overwhelmed right now. Just, I mean, to yourself, right? Or to your significant other. I'm not saying, broadcasting it, right? Right.
But I'm saying just being able to put awareness into your body, which is the first step. Okay, I'm having shortness of breath, or I'm losing my appetite, or whatever it is, and that can be the window into, well, what's going on right now? Okay, well, I've been thinking about maybe my parents or something like that, or dealing with somebody else or an issue, and I haven't realized that it's taking its toll on me. That's the first step, is to just be aware and label it, because the body is trying to express or trying to tell you, give you a signal. But a lot of us grow up not even connected to our body. So we only allow anger or rage, and then, a lot of us grew up with fathers that, expressed anger and rage, right? Mm-hmm. So that behind that, though, what's behind that? Because, just seeing them as a crazy man is one thing, right? Mm-hmm. But now you get older and you're like, oh, I get it. That's why you were like, no, if I had to deal with what you had to deal with, or a system, or dealing with, on the job, or blah, 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 I get you're feeling boxed in. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're feeling discriminated against. You're feeling whatever, and you don't know what to do with those feelings, right? So it comes out as anger. So I think that's the key thing, is being able to label it.
And think of our parents, right? Like, think of our fathers, for example, where coming from a whole different country, whole different culture, whole different lifestyle, a whole different climate. You know what I mean? And you're basically starting from, you're starting over, right? You're essentially starting over. So you got the stress of that, you know what I mean? Trying to deal with the world that doesn't totally accept you, especially being over here, and dealing with the shock of that. Now you have, kids or multiple kids, for what have you, and the stresses and the pressures of that. You know what I mean? Maybe things aren't as easy as they seem. You know what I mean? And you develop a sense of pressure from that too, right? So that lashing out, or that anger that you speak of, I think a lot of our parents, or a lot of our fathers, what's the word? They basically, like, that was almost like their form of expression. The only way they can, an emotion that they can understand to exercise. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, I feel like now, I mean, the pressures are still there, but it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? I think we're a little more educated on how to deal with some of these stressors in some cases, but at the same time, there's so much different emotions that we don't exercise outside of what you're speaking about, right?
Absolutely.
Outside of silence, outside of, keeping them walls up, outside of all of those things, right?
Okay, you just brought up a good point. That's actually another thing that a lot of men do, is they keep silent.
Mm-hmm.
They shut down or they're silent. It's either, raging or whatever, and then silence. But a lot of times that silence is a protective thing. On the outside, we may look at them like, what's wrong with them? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But they're carrying so much and they're trying to deal with it and they don't know how to deal with it. So shutting down is a way for them to deal with it.
Right.
Now, of course, a lot of people, when they come home or whatever it is, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people like time for themselves,
Right.
to decompress and need that alone time. When it's like normally a pattern with men to kind of shut down, and to kind of like keep quiet, too quiet,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't really know how to express themselves and how to communicate through like discomfort. That's why I go back and I say labeling it is the key, and
Mm-hmm.
being aware. Awareness is everything. Just bringing awareness into that is can interrupt that cycle.
Yeah, and I know for me, like just on a personal level, what helped me is I think when I started having my own children, because it wasn't, that learned behavior in terms of that aspect, it wasn't a cycle that I wanted to kind of pass down either. I didn't want to pass that down to my kids, you know what I mean? Or have me, repeating what I seen, you know what I mean? And some of those senses. So it's like, at least not the whole scope of it anyway, because listen, I love my father for sure, but yeah, I mean, those stressors, those things that came along with it, that anger and stuff, like, how many friends do you have that, like, we all have the same story? Everybody was more or less afraid of their father. Almost like when you come in the house, it's like, shh, don't say nothing. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, okay, I can share stuff with my pops. I can do stuff. I know so many friends that had that relationship where it was like, yo, he came in, yo, don't say nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you realize that what they went through in the household they grew up in,
Right.
and how they learned that anger, explosive anger, and the fact that a lot of us have our anger, have our issues with rage that comes out in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
or a lot of us can just be kind of hiding it or suppressing it in some ways,
Right.
and that's when you can get into issues, whether it be addiction or like womanizing or whatever we need to make us feel better, feel in control, ourselves.
It's interesting because I remember one time, I was going through a situation that was kind of stressing me out, and this was like a few years back, probably like 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I remember you made a statement to me, John, that honestly I never forgot. And it was, I think I was explaining to you the situation, and I remember you said something that was very poignant, where it was, you stated that basically like, we're expected as black men to be Superman, to be a superhero, and we constantly have that cape on, but when we take the cape off, who's there for us?
Yeah, it's true.
And it's something I never forgot. I was like, wow, that's a great way of looking at it, because yeah, like there's no manual, there's no blueprint for, when you're going through your stuff as a grown man with a family, and you know what I mean? Like and you go through those different roadblocks and obstacles in your life. There's no blueprint, for somebody to tell you like, hey, this is what you need to go through. These are the steps. Look out for this. It's all trial by error, and and I know we always say that there's no blueprint for this. There's no guide for this. But I like sometimes we say it as a badge of honor, and sometimes I'm not 100% sure that's a great thing. You know what I'm saying?
It's true. Yeah, absolutely, it's true. Yep, and that's why my message is we have to be there for each other, but most importantly, you have to be there for yourself, and that's really the key thing. You've got to be there for you. So you got to know when to set your boundaries. You got to know when to It's when it's time to take care of you. You got to know when it's time to say no. You got to know when it's time to take a break, or if you need support, because the stats with men is not good in terms of illness, right?
Right.
And we can go so many ways in this conversation because there's so many factors and things that black men have to deal with. Like I always say, black men have inherited and faced unique trauma, so they need unique tools to help them heal through it. Yeah, we've inherited generational trauma, generational stuff from the stuff that happened to our people, and then the continuous things we see in the media, continuous attacks, psychological attacks and stuff like that. The nervous system of a black man doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe.
Right.
Like the system itself, the body of a black man, if you could conceive of it as a body, is not a safe place to be, because, like you mentioned before, black men have to constantly be on guard. How we're seen in society is totally different from other people, right? How we see each other and deal with each other is totally different. And so, you see, what happens is that there's so much of our gifts, our natural gifts, that kind of shine, and that seems to draw most of the attention. So we dominate in sports, we dominate in music and culture and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And so that we get that shine, but the other half of that is not spoken about. The other half of that is that, well, yeah, that's our gifts and our talents help us to shine, but the trauma is that doesn't overshadow the trauma, and it's not going to help you heal that. You know what I'm saying? And so I think right now we're at a place that I'm happy to see that a lot of people online are now changing their tune and willing to look at how they can be real with themselves and take care of themselves and take care of their well-being and break that cycle.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I love seeing that. There's like there's a Instagram page, Therapy for Black Men. They're really popular. Express Yourself Black Man is another one. And so they're really pushing the message to kind of normalize, you know what? It's the cool thing now is to take care of ourselves. The cool thing is to be well. The cool thing is to heal our trauma. You know what I'm saying? And because that wasn't the cool thing before. The cool thing was just seek power, seek tough, try to be that alpha male and get status or, whatever it is, all these things that we think is going to fill a hole, but it doesn't fill a hole. Right? So now I'm happy to see a bit of a turn of the tide where the cool thing now is to, is self-improvement, self-awareness, being responsible for self and realizing that's the key to your actual power.
And also too, just, when you see online, you see a lot of, at least I catch, maybe it's the algorithms on my feeds, but I see a lot more, discussions about like positive conversations, even speaking to yourself, positive thoughts, positive, all that stuff kind of helps too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the power of the word, like how powerful the word is.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have that 20 years ago. Remember, when there's no social media, we didn't have any of that, right? So it's amazing that that's happening. I'm really happy to see that. Absolutely. And 100, man.
And for you, like I guess to kind of lead into this part of the conversation, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about like how important the sense of brotherhood is in terms of the safe space, the protection of the minds of black men?
Well, I think you're getting a little bit of that flavor of that with the recent incident in Alabama. That's a whole other story, right? But like,
Oh, the Negro Avengers. The Negro
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So you see, kind of like that was different. That
yeah,
was
man.
cool. That was unique, and
Especially when Bobby Shmurda Sr. threw his hat up in the air. You know what I mean? Like that was a call to arms, right?
yeah. But it was like everything was just synchronized and ideally how you'd like things to be. But I think that that's also part of healing as brothers start to really embrace this work of really kind of healing themselves. I think you're going to see more of this brotherhood happen naturally because you'll be able to more trust yourself, trust each other, trust other people. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And working with brothers who can kind of work through their emotions so that we're not reacting all the time.
Right.
Because a lot of the issues is emotional stuff that brothers react on in the moment, right? And a lot of those issues come from like childhood wounds,
Yeah.
And so more brothers that kind of take responsibility for that, work on that path, because it's not an easy path. It takes courage, right? And commitment to walk on that path. That path allows that true brotherhood to come through, because then it's a thing where you're not reacting from that lower place within you. Doesn't mean that you don't have those moments. Doesn't mean that you don't, you might not make mistakes or whatever it is. But what it means is you won't let those moments kind of take you down, control you,
right?
Take over you, and you're ready to take accountability for those moments. You can see your part in this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And you have some more emotional maturity, as they call it, emotional intelligence. And that, to me, is the biggest thing that we need right now.
In terms of the community, the fostering of brotherhood.
Fostering of brotherhood, yeah, but brotherhood comes from brothers who are actively building themselves.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to default mode. Default mode is the programs that you receive from your childhood, and that's the same shit that we complain about all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When we get together, or black brothers do dumb shit to each other, that's nothing more than just a little boy inside of them that those wounds. So more brothers that are kind of standing up and walking that path.
Yeah.
I think that out of that you'll see good brotherhood, and all it takes is, because the thing with that whole Alabama thing is, all it takes is like examples.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you think?
Yeah, visual examples for sure.
So just we see examples of brotherhood, like, actually working together, actually making money together, actually exchanging ideas and supporting and bigging each other up, actively done with the gossiping, done with the bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Low vibrational stuff, but actually moving in that spirit. The more examples you see, I mean, that's going to speak 1,000 words to people.
I mean, as funny as that image is, it does represent a unique point, because during COVID, especially when everything happened, with the social unrest and everything that happened after George Floyd got murdered, it's I always those are one thing I always kept asking throughout that whole time is what happens after the protest? Like after the protest fades, after the energy of that dies down, what is it that we learn? What are the fundamental things that we are we going to learn from here going forward? You know what I mean? To make us
exactly better.
Yeah. And at first it started off at a beautiful place in terms of recycling the black dollar, in terms of meeting of the minds, like all of those things, checking in, like the constant check-ins, on your peoples and making sure they're good, not just your family and your loved ones, but just some of your friends, because we always say there's some people that are suffering in silence and you don't even know. Sometimes that phone call, sometimes that conversation, it awakens them. You know what I mean? It maybe snaps them out of it, of going to a dark place. And sometimes I wonder, like after COVID, and now that we're kind of going back into reality again, or we're back into full mode where we were. It's kind of like, okay, are those principles gone now, or are they still going to remain? You know, and you are seeing more of of that. You know what I mean? A little bit more of that than before. It's not as strong, and I guess it's hard to keep that intensity maybe for that period of time when it was that strong. But you do see examples, not counting Alabama, of course, but but you do see examples of that kind of like coming to grips with, okay, like we got to be better. We got to be better for us. We got to be better for ourselves. Let's kind of unite our minds and unite this together. You know what I mean? Like let's unite together to build stronger minds financially, stronger minds mentally, physically, spiritually, so that the residual effects can trickle down to our children. You know what I mean? And make them stronger, right? So, I mean, you do start to see some examples of that. I mean, for me, I think brotherhood is everything to me, as long as it has these components to me, right? As long as it can grow you, as long as it can de-stress you, and it helps to evolve you, and it's circled around love and positivity. If you can hit all of those marks, whether it's a chat group, organized get-togethers, if it develops from small things of like going to the gym, working out, playing basketball, whatever it is, I think the constant conversations and the communications that have you with like-minded brothers can also help you elevate and make you and give you that protection from that protection of the mind, where it's like you're willing to share more ideas, share more things that's on your mind. So I think it is important, in that sense too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a work in progress. It's a process, and I think as you're saying, as more people practice it or just start being aware of that, it starts with self. It starts with coming back to really healing, appreciating, and honoring yourself. Because a lot of most black men, because we come from such difficult situations, or just situations that were not, completely ideal, there's a lot of holes or a lot of wounds in like the soul, in the heart there of black men. So black men haven't really learned to embrace and appreciate and love themselves and realize how much of a gift, that's what I always say, a gift to the world that we are. A gift to society that we are,
right? That
how important we are and how unique we are. We don't think of ourselves like that because there's so many counter messages that come at the psyche daily, or we just don't think of ourselves like that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So this is my thing, because I was always a part of different black organizations or black men's groups.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah,
so
myself as well.
And so just drawn to it, naturally just drawn as if it's a calling. I knew this was going to be part of my life's work, but like, this is what we should have. See, this is what I want to say. You see, you have to reparent yourself now. You have to give yourself what you should have gotten. Feel me? And
yeah.
A lot of times men don't want to face that, and they'll struggle in many different areas of their life. Maybe they'll have certain things together and they'll ride on that. Maybe their money's together or their careers together. But that when that gets threatened, they get messed up. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because their identity was tied up in that, their self-image, trying to fill that void. Because I've worked with a lot of brothers like that. I've worked with a lot of brothers who on the surface appear to have it all, but then when they're in my office or they're in in my group or whatever it is, the truth comes out, right?
Yeah.
They're crying. They're unloading a lot of stress, a lot of issues, a lot of trauma comes out. I'm like, whoa, but people around them would never know, right?
Yeah.
So you have to. We're stepping into a time of us loving on ourselves again, really appreciating who we are, and stepping into that power and owning that. So I think that's really important as brothers, and then building with brothers of like mind, because I hear the thing about brotherhood,
yeah,
but it's like if brothers aren't on that path, it's hard to build with brothers who are not in alignment with that path.
1,000%.
It's like fruits on a tree. Like certain fruits ripe at different times. I'm not going to deal with a fruit that's not ripe yet. We can assist in giving them seeds and giving them help, right? Watering that fruit, giving them sunlight, giving it what it needs. But at the end of the day, it's going to ripen on its own terms. But but I'm not going to stop my progress, and I'm not going to jeopardize my safety or my peace of mind if I'm ripe and I'm ready to go in that area. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that the brotherhood comes from like-minded who form examples, but also offer a path that other brothers can follow or can learn from, right? Because I've always learned from black men. A lot of my teachers were older black men that turned to me and helped me all my life, challenged me, debated with me, confused me, friggin', thought I knew shit, and they were just showing how much I didn't know, and it was great, and I feel like, but I had to be, I was ready, I was open. A lot of my friends weren't, they weren't open at the time. I was open. I wanted to know shit, even if I was confused or I didn't like what I was hearing, Right. So, yeah, we gotta continue that path of really bettering ourselves, appreciating and honoring and loving ourselves. That's what I want to teach my son, because if you look for the world to show you who you are, you're gonna be messed up.
Yeah, it's got to come from us.
Yeah, it's got to be. You have to define yourself, and and let go of what you inherited. Somebody said this, and I like it. This is an exercise you can do. Is you write down on a piece of paper, what are the gifts that I got from my parents and my family, or my whole line. Mm-hmm. But what are the burdens I got too? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of burdens we inherited that's not our own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so really sit down on a piece of paper and just look at, what are the gifts that I got from them, and what are the burdens, these things that I realize are not mine, and it's time for me to drop and let it go. Otherwise those burdens will sneak up on you and you pass them on to your children.
I never thought about it like that, actually. Never thought about it.
You kind of did, because you recognized in the beginning there's certain things you wanted to do different.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
But I know what you're saying, though. You didn't. Trust me, I'm the same way with me. I didn't think of it like that as well either. But they know trauma is passed on, both environmentally, like we learn by watching them.
Yeah. But
also it's biologically too. It is. I mean, they didn't believe that before, but it is now. There's research that shows that now, that PTSD and stuff is passed on.
Yeah.
Through in families. So a lot of our parents, a lot of our dads, our family was in survival mode. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
your emotions are more raw when you're in survival mode.
Oh my God, bro, you ain't got time for nothing else. What do you let's keep it real.
Yeah.
And everything is a problem, and everything is overwhelming. It make a mountain out of a mole,
Right.
And it's because they didn't know they're in survival mode. Their nervous system is in fight and flight. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that, and they grew up in a home that had that. So I think we're the generation, which you said, that is ready to break that. And the key to breaking that is introducing to our system that we're safe, that we're loved, and and we deserve that. That's the key. So the system can relax and calm down and reach a state of balance again.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, and to touch on that, like, yeah, and from that you could share your ideas, your visions, you know what I mean, in terms of what it is you want to accomplish, or you know, or what you think others may want to accomplish, or you know what I mean. Like, it's interesting because when, even with South Shore Ave, like when I started this, you know, I don't know if you know the story, but when I started this, right, it came from of something that I deeply wanted to do, right, but because I was out of it for so long, I wasn't sure how it would come off, right, and for about a year or 2 years or so, I started as a blog, you know, and I used to write articles and different things, if you remember. And I think, you know, and it's still on my website and everything. But for about I would say for about a year, but the first few months for a solid year, I shared it with just one of my chat groups that I was in, because I felt like that chat group was like kind of like-minded. They were outside the box thinkers, you know, they're brothers who, you know, kind of supported. You know what I mean? They'll give you honest feedback. You know what I mean? And I that's kind of who I use as my audience for the first for the first little bit. You know what I mean? Because that group is also a group that, you know, that celebrates and shares their accomplishments. Whether it's a promotion, well, doesn't matter how big or small it is. You know what I mean? We're always there to, you know, to pat you on the back, cheer you on. You know what I mean? And so that's why I started sharing it there first before I started sharing it to everybody else, right? And like it gave me the gas. Like even though I know I'm the driver of the car, and I you know, that's why I sat in the front seat of this Vision, and you know, and I'm still driving it, you know. But at the beginning, it's like, you know, it's like you didn't always have the gas money for it, and you just wanted to make sure that, you know, like, and that's where you kind of got help from others to you know, to toss in a 5 here, a 10 here, to kind of help you with the vision. And then all of a sudden it just keeps growing and growing and growing. But that's kind of how it started. That was my little example of how a brotherhood could work in your favor, in your benefit, because it actually gave me the gas to continue to drive this car.
Right, exactly. Yep. It's funny. I was going to ask you why. It's so funny. I was going to ask you, why did you start the podcast? I was going to actually ask you that.
Yeah,
it was on my mind today.
Was it? Oh, that's interesting. That's funny. But I mean, that's part of the reason. I felt like, you know, if I can go back in time, I probably would have stayed on this earlier, especially when I was done school and all of that. I just felt like you were doing stuff, and it was like, I don't know if you were trying to live up to a certain image. I don't know if it's necessarily that, but I just felt like there was like an itch I needed to scratch. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just something I needed to scratch. Didn't matter what I was doing. It was like that. It's like I needed to at least try this. If it didn't work, it didn't work. You know what I mean? And I come from a family of entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? I come from, you know, people who think outside the box. You know what I mean? Like in my own circles, in my own family. So like I felt like that was my turn. You know what I mean? And it was like I needed to see that through. Just doing the normal thing that everybody else does, that's not enough. You know what I mean? Like I needed more than that. And that's where it came from. I think that's essentially where it came from. I always loved media, you know what I mean? And I had many different influences, from sports and music to political to sociological, you know what I mean? And different aspects. But like the common theme is like, if it was a good topic, the way that it was being discussed, like it would always rope me in, you know, and I love that feeling. I wanted to kind of be able to be the one to do that as well. And that's not an ego thing, but it's just something I always felt like I could do. And I had a passion for it. So I think from my foundation, like when I moved to Toronto, like I'm sharing a lot today, but like when I moved to Toronto, you know, I came initially on a basketball scholarship, but I was one of the first people out of like my crew, or like, you know, to basically leave like the city of Montreal. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was one of the first out of my circles to leave, but I was pursuing a dream, you know, and I had some family here to back me up, but it was a chance I took, you know what I mean? So I think as much as it was scary, it was also like I needed to do it too. You know what I mean? It was like I needed to do it. So I think that was kind of like in the spirit of that. Like I just needed to do it. I needed to see it through, see how it worked out, or see how it works out. So I think that's to answer your question. I think that's where it all kind of stemmed from.
interesting because, you know, passions, our mission, our purpose. I'm a big believer and a big supporter of that, of like, what is your passion? I do believe we have a purpose here. That's my belief, and everyone has their mission, right, of what they came to do. It doesn't have to be some big grand thing. It could just be whatever you're here to learn or whatever you're here to express or create, you know? And some people, like my grandma, it's her creating an environment where people feel so comfortable and accepted and loved and well fed, you know? And that was her gift to the whole community, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important for Black men to find their passion and to walk it and to express it and to not ask or need permission to do that. So I do feel like this passion thing is tied to our healing. There's links to that. There's links to us really doing this work to learn to appreciate ourselves and throw off the lies and the conditions of the past and find our passion and find and express what we're here to do. I think there's a link between those two. It's like this journey. I think, they call it the hero's journey. Right? That every movie is based off that template or that script. The hero goes on this journey really to find himself. Along the way, he has to face a lot of challenges and setbacks, and only to come back to figuring out how he's going to defeat those challenges and come back to himself, but at a greater level. So I just say all that to say that you're the hero of your story, man, and I think we all are. And right now, it's like, what do we want to write?
Right.
What are we writing right now in this chapter? And we have the opportunity now to write a different script, break the patterns, break these things, and form and not fall into the default program mode of society or of our family programs. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we have this chance. And I'm not gonna act like it's easy. It's not easy.
No, absolutely not.
Easy. It's not fucking easy, man, because you got,
a lot of mental obstacles to go through.
Yeah, and a lot of different things and a lot of tests and a lot of traps. Oh, shit, you made a wrong decision there. Or you fell for that trap, You took that bait. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You have to watch out for this, watch out for that, but that's just part of the journey anyway. So I feel like this is such an important podcast tonight because there's some brother listening, right, that's going to listen to this and is probably dealing with something.
Yeah.
And dealing with it privately. I want that brother to know that in him is something greater than his problem, is something greater than this obstacle. And maybe he hasn't found it yet, but not to give up, you know what I'm saying? And not to give in to the problem. Because there's definitely something in him that he hasn't even seen what it is. He doesn't even believe that maybe it's there. But if he continues to walk that journey and find that power within him, he'll be thankful that he never gave up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is to keep going. It's to keep going. And every lesson, I know this is cliche central right now, but every loss isn't a loss, man. You know what I mean? Like, even if you try to get to the end and you don't make it, there's lessons within those losses so it's not a loss. You know what I mean? You can apply it to the next thing that you do, because we're not, as much as I believe that we have a passion and we, like yourself and you got to follow those passions. I always feel like there's more than, we're multifaceted. There's more than just one. You know what I mean? Like, we're not here to just do one thing only. But it's
man.
It's
mm-hmm.
If you can exercise all of it, then do it. You know what I mean? Most people don't get any, or not don't get any, but they don't exercise any. You know what I mean? If you can get to the point where you can exercise multiple passions and, you know, do it with intent and with purpose and try to exercise it to the best of its ability, then I think that's a win. Whether, you know, you become a millionaire or you satisfy, you know, a select group of people, or your thing is cliche, not cliche, but like a niche, like those are the wins. Those are the jewels in that, right?
I think for me, I'll tell you, speaking to that, on the next level there is the fact that for me, my mentors, you know, older black men that taught me, that I was drawn to, and that a lot of people were influenced by and found them extremely powerful and extremely accomplished. They have one thing in common. They broke through this barrier of caring what people thought of them. They didn't ask for permission.
Right.
And they actually were so free in how they moved and so comfortable with who they were that they were like multi-dimensional beings, man, like into everything, you know, whether, you know, and you couldn't put them in a box. And that's what I loved about them. You couldn't put them in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't say, well, he is this or he is that, you know, or
right.
He's into that, because he's not. He's, you know, like, well, you do that too. Like, oh, you do this too. You do that. Wow. And, you know, they exemplified the image of the man who's just like multi-talented, multifaceted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you know, the man that just can do so many things and is not afraid to be him. You know what I'm saying? And it's totally him. I think that for me is kind of like the cherry, the mountaintop, is coming into alignment with yourself and being so comfortable and aligned with who you are that you can express all these different aspects of yourself fully and freely.
Yeah.
And I think we need more examples of that, because black men, you know, we're put in boxes. We can only act like this. We can only do this. Dress like this. This is what's cool for us. This is what's not. There's like these set templates out there, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate because other cultures are free to do what they want to a degree.
Yeah.
You know, and move as if the planet is theirs. So.
It's a good point, because, you know, as you said, like, I think even for myself, like, you know, I like to do things a little differently too. I'm more wired to do things a little differently, you know, as opposed to like what everybody else is doing. You know what I mean? I find like, you know, when everybody else, if you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, it's a little boring. It's like life is a little, at least for me, you know what I mean? Like I need a little splash sometimes.
Yeah, because the thing is, trauma doesn't allow you to be your authentic self.
Right. You're in that prism.
Yeah, like when you know, coming from where most brothers come from, family environments of trauma, inheriting trauma, mm-hmm. society creating these negative attacks on black men.
Right.
The continued message is you're not okay. Yourself is not okay. It's an attack on the assault on the self, they call it. Like mm-hmm. your self is not okay. So you constantly learn to adjust and not be yourself. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That creates a thing where you don't trust yourself.
Right.
You know, and so it's fucking boring is the word, because then there's all these people running around just clones of each other, you know, like they clone Tyrone. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all, like someone said online, the point of that movie is they're trying to tell you we're already been cloned. Like, you can go to any city and see a Tyrone. You can go to any city and see it's the same blueprint of a brother. Why is that? Why are we following this blueprint that's already laid out for us, this program? It's because we haven't been able to tap into our authentic self. A lot of that because of our trauma. It tells you, learned early on, not okay to be ourselves. And we have to be this other self to kind of fit in or to survive in this world.
Right.
The good news is, this is being challenged today. And the more you can become, that this is really the hero's journey. What I talked about is coming back to yourself and appreciating and aligning with your authentic self and being more authentic in your relationships, being more authentic in who you are and being okay with that.
Yeah.
That's when true relationship or brotherhood and all that can form, because we're making room for everybody's authentic self. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people are uncomfortable with people who are authentic.
Yeah, true.
A lot of people are uncomfortable with that. They want the comfort zone is what is seen as normal or okay. I'm from Jamaica. We don't do this, we don't do that. We act like this. So I'm from Africa. We do this. I'm from wherever it is, and that in itself, those patterns. I'm just being using generalizations here, but those patterns create those boxes. And what I see is this spiritual awakening right now, especially for brothers, to get back to who we really are, to tap into our authentic self, past these labels and these barriers and these prisons and these conditions that were put on us or we put on ourselves.
Right.
And trying to really get back to who we really are, because that is when we can truly be powerful men. When you are authentically you and you're standing in your power. And I've been in the presence of men like that. That's why I know what that looks like.
Right.
They're not perfect. They have issues, too, whatever. But I've seen what's possible, and I'm like, wow, I want to be like that. It's something crazy when you're in the presence of someone with that. It's very intimidating. Not many people are like that, because everybody hides behind a mask.
Yeah, it's true.
But someone is a lot more authentic and comfortable and aligned with who they are and appreciating and loving who they are. And you can't mess with someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't move someone like that. They're already ahead. They're already creating amazing, creative things and stepping into that. They can maneuver in any environment. It's them. They can connect to anybody. Oh.
Yeah, no, Jonathan, I totally agree with you. But before we go, though, I want you to discuss what you have going on, and in terms of your trainings and your like in relation to this, like what tools do you have that you can help to start protecting the minds?
I'm glad you brought that up, because we might have just got off and we would have just called each other like, we forgot to give the plug. All right.
I never forget the plug, my friend. Never.
Okay. Well, that's good. So what is it? So I do a lot of different things, but one of the things I do is I'm focusing right now is obviously on Black men. I have a kind of a monthly program. I call it Mindful Liberation, and doors are open. So I'm taking, people who want to come and be part of a brotherhood where you actually learn techniques, practices to empower you, but also help you actually deal with things that you need to deal with. Emotionally, and mentally. It's not a place for mental health issues that, you should definitely seek professional support for that. But it's just for the brother that, there's certain patterns that he sees, certain things that he may be doing that he doesn't like, that maybe some form of self-sabotage or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And
we work on how we can break through those patterns, work with the subconscious mind and mindfulness and meditation and these different practices to help us break through that. So I got that going on. I also have an audio program I'm about to put out. Black Men Let It Go. That's an audio program, a series of meditations to help release stress, built up tension, and overthinking. So that's that. Those are the two things I'm working on. I'm also working with some Black organizations in the States. Express Yourself Black Men. They have a program called Safe Haven, where they do like coaching for Black men, and that's it. So that's it on dealing with the men's side, and that's kind of where my focus is. I don't only work with men, but that's
for sure. But
yeah, it's needed, man, big time. And so I'm creating this safe space where together, everyone says, create a safe space, but like, people don't feel that it's safe. So you might think it's safe, but they might not think it's safe. So it's really about everybody in there feeling safe within themselves, in their bodies, and in the environment, and learning how to be, take that power, that energy, those insights into their relationships, into their families, into their homes. Right. So we need that. So those gifts were given to me. I've been a part of things like that growing up, and I just don't see enough of that right now. So I'm like, you know what? I can bring what I do naturally into this.
No, I mean, I definitely appreciate that. This conversation, was I like sometimes when we bring an offline conversation to real life, aka on the podcast. But it's something we've had many discussions on these topics and more that probably should have been its own show a long time ago. This is probably one of them, but I appreciate you for definitely hopping on this podcast, man, and having this conversation.
Thank you for bringing me on. I appreciate that. Thank you for helping me get this message out, plugging my stuff. And I know there's brothers listening, and there's going to be a certain brother listening that's just going to hit him, and it's going to be like, yo, thank you for this. So great questions too. Great angles you came at. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Nah, man, no doubt. Thank you for checking out the latest edition of the Ave Podcast. A special shout out goes out to my guest, Jonathan Boxill, for coming on my show. Go ahead and check out his program, which focuses on meditations for men, which is at centeredandaware.com/meditations-for-men. So once again, that is www.centeredandaware.com/meditations-for-men. You can also check out the mindful liberation section as well on that site. All right. So once again, that is centeredandaware.com/mindful liberation, as well as centeredandaware.com/meditations for men. All right. Check it out today. It'll be worth your time. All right. Thank you once again for the support, everyone. Tune in next week for a new episode of the Ave Podcast before Labor Day weekend. Much appreciation to all of you. All right. So if you haven't checked out the recent episodes of Memory Lane, especially if you are into nostalgia and jokes, please go ahead and check them out. One was on the days partying at the legendary Atlantis nightclub here in Toronto. The other one was on the legendary Times Caravana Weekend on Yonge Street. It's some of my favorite episodes. Go through them. All right. And if you want to dive further into my catalog, check out SouthShoreAve.com for all things South Shore Ave. Once again, that is SouthShoreAve.com. For Jonathan Boxill, this is Cal C. And you just tuned in to the latest episode of the Ave Podcast right here on South Shore Ave Radio. All right, until next week, we're gone. Peace. Have a great weekend.